Symposium, January 2025.
Austin, do you purposely make your setup look like Ben Shapiro?
Yeah.
I'm getting that vibe. Like, that's the Ben Shapiro camera angle.
We've been talking since the 5th grade, and somehow we've got more to say. Beat kicks and faster rhythm. Inflation's high, the game's too steep. Stream wars rage while we lose sleep. Big tech's wild, the Fed's a mess. But let's start a party, I guess. Symposium, where tangents thrive. Old friends talking, the takes collide. Symposium, no wrong or right, just good conversation deep into the night. Yeah, we're still talking.
I don't know if did any of you watch the 2-hour keynote from NVIDIA that I shared? But I'm going to play this, the first 2-minute opening intro thing that they played.
This is how intelligence is made. A new kind of factory. Generator of tokens. The building blocks of AI. Tokens have opened a new frontier, the first step into an extraordinary world, where endless possibilities are born. Tokens transform words into knowledge and breathe life into images. They turn ideas into videos and help us safely navigate any environment. Tokens teach robots to move like the masters. Inspire new ways to celebrate our victories.
A martini, please.
Tony, light up.
Thank you, Adam.
And give us peace of mind when we need it most.
Hi, Maroka.
Hi, Anna. It's good to see you again.
Hi, Emma. We're gonna take a blood sample today, okay?
Don't worry, I'm gonna be here the whole time.
They bring meaning to numbers to help us better understand the world around us. Predict the dangers that surround us. And find cures for the threats within us. Tokens can bring our visions to life and restore what we've lost.
Zachary, I got my voice back, buddy.
They help us move forward, one small step at a time. And one giant leap together.
You should watch the whole thing when you have a free hour and a half to see. And I'll probably reference several of the things as we talk about the different topics today, but just to see the future of the models that are being built. And the concept that really clicked for me there was the idea of tokens, and that is the bits of the past, the ones and zeros of the past that make what we see on the internet today and on our computers today. In the future is tokens. And so everything around you, whether it's a word or an image or a video or any, the whole world basically is built of tokens. And the goal, and like NVIDIA is making models now with the goal of capturing like all the world. Because if they can capture all the world and tokenize the world essentially, then that will enable all of the robotics, self-driving, everything that like you could see coming into the future. So anyway, I would say it was wild to watch and see some of the stuff that like they're doing. And it's a perfect segue into Sam's article that he wanted to discuss. So any commentary about the video, but overall, like that was just a realization I had that I felt was important that you all might have gotten a value in seeing. I also thought it was weird that there was a little robot girl in the doctor's office.
That was one of my reactions as well. I think the idea of like humanizing AI is kind of weird, and how we're like, oh, we need to put like robots out there with smiles and faces so that they feel more like humans and people get comfortable with them. I don't like that aspect. I think a lot of times when people try to make futuristic videos and stuff about where they see the future going, it's like based on like things that they've read in fantasy books or things that they've seen on the big screen, and like flying cars is the future. It's like, well, maybe there's like a different way to use this application. Like, is it really going to be just these like simple things that we've come up with in like TV shows like that? I don't know if that's how it's really going to apply. So that was weird. I did like the robots that were like cooking. That reminded me of Star Wars, 100%. That looked like it was the Mos Eisley Cantina. And then I had a question about when you say, what could you, I don't know that much about AI in terms of like tokens. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So basically you have a model. So like today you would think of like ChatGPT as a large language model. So it's trained on written word and like images mainly, and like a lot of video hours too. But what you basically, when you put a prompt in, if you say like, what is the circumference of the earth? That is some amount of tokens. Usually it's like one token for every like, it's like 21 characters or something. Like there's a conversion of like characters to tokens. So like to say that, maybe that sentence maybe is like 4 tokens. Those tokens then go into the language model and are like a currency within that then spit out and compute an answer based on those tokens. And so then that's how you essentially can calculate like the cost of doing the AI, like whatever you're asking the AI to do, is by the amount of tokens that are part of your input. Essentially, yeah. And so then so basically everything that it's trained on is like kind of converted into tokens. You then put it back into the model. The model can then think freely with all the information that it's pre-trained on and that it's like continuing to train itself on, and then create something new. That's like the part that's artificial. It's creating something new based on its whole repository of information out of like the tokens that you provided.
It's a way to like.
So Austin, did you find all that out in that video? Was a 2-hour video go into the tokens, or did you research this?
No, I researched tokens after I watched the video.
That too, after, okay.
The 2-hour video goes into mainly like all of the different really like models that they're putting out to enable all of the things that they like showed in that pre-video of like the self-driving model they're building out, the chip, and then a lot of like the new chips that they're building out that will enable like to efficiently run all these models. And then also like they're building, like they have a robot chip now, basically, right? Like there is a robot AI chip that will be like the standard of what goes into all of these like humanoid type robots that now is enabled to use all of that training data to make the robot work.
Robot that did like average like daily tasks would be pretty sweet. I would say that. But I also feel like we've simplified our lives so much that I don't know if we even need robots to do those daily tasks as much anymore. You know, like, I don't know, with so many people working from home and stuff, do you really need a robot to like do your laundry? Or
it's this is my like theme for the whole thing today of all of like the future questions. So I don't want to jump the gun of like the predictions, but I'm all in on the robots. It's for sure happening. I've never been more convinced of anything. Like it's gonna happen. I don't want to go into my like hypotheses yet. I'll save it for the predictions part, but that's my theme of the year.
I'll be
robots, specifically like physical.
Just like robotics industry is going to explode. There will be robots in everything and everything that we do. It'll start in like healthcare. It's already started in healthcare, obviously, with like surgery and stuff. It'll go into
and not
manufacturing.
not software, but like actually in the physical world, like manipulating things and moving things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with the ability also to make decisions that aren't like coded by a human. So like if you're a like forklift robot in a factory, right, you're basically going to create a virtual, like they'll talk about this in the video you guys should watch, but they're talking about this idea of virtual twins. So anything that you want to essentially train, like AI has like layers of training. So there's now 3 scaling laws, it's called, within AI. There's pre-training, which you know about. And so that's, you take you train the AI on all of the internet and then you release it to the public. And now it's smarter because it knows all the internet. There's post-training, which is where it's learning as you're going, right? So as everyone's interacting with ChatGPT, it's continuing to learn and continuing to train itself. But then there's something called now test time scaling, which is more of reasoning. So if you notice, ChatGPT, I don't know if you guys have the paid model or not, but it has something called O1 now, which is its reasoning model. And so when you ask it a question, it'll start to think and it'll reason through the logic of how it's going to solve the problem, and then it'll go solve it. And it takes a lot longer. The same thing Google Gemini has with this deep research in its pro version. You ask it to do something, it will lay out the path for how it's going to think about the problem. It's not just going to spit out an answer. It's going to say, here's how I'm going to think about it. Gemini in the deep research will go then research all over and find information, and it'll show you where it's pulling that information from. And so it's doing that reasoning, and again, it takes a lot longer to do, and it's like a lot more compute intensive. But the idea is that eventually everything will have a digital type twin, is what they're calling it. So if you have a factory, right, you build a digital version of that factory, and now there is billions of simulations that could run of what the right way to solve the problem that you're going to input into that factory are, that then can train your robots on your factory floor to do it in the most efficient way. So now that forklift isn't just controlled by the code that like Justin wrote or the remote control he's holding, it's controlled by the fact that there is a reasoning model in the background that is making a new decision, an artificial intelligence decision.
Something a human has maybe never thought of or maybe never would think.
And so it was crazy to see in the keynote, in all of the scenarios that they played out of that, in all the factories and stuff, there are humans, but their humans are just walking around doing nothing. And so they like kept the humans there to give you like the sense of like, oh, there's still a place for humans alongside these robots, but the humans were doing nothing except walking around in every scenario. And so deeper problem, but anyway, let's go to your article.
Yeah, well, first I want to react. I guess I have a question. You said something that interested me. I need to research what tokens are. I've used ChatGPT and it says like, sorry, you've run out of tokens for the day. And I just thought it was like just compute power somehow. Something you said made me think like you're almost like like it's a currency that you're providing the thing. I don't think that's how it works. But what you said that interested me was if you tokenize the whole world, then you can solve real world problems like self-driving or weather or basically anything. And to me, that is just like, I mean, is that possible? Can you tokenize the whole world? I mean, does the video say that that's like,
yes, they have
an explicit goal?
They have a model that they're gonna like that is what they're going to do. So it's not that a few things. When you've run out of like tokens in ChatGPT, that is like they're limiting the amount of input that you can put into their model, like of usage that you're pulling. Like you're pulling compute from their model. And so they're saying like, hold on, like too much. And that's the same of like the context window of like what you can interact with. If you load a book into ChatGPT, that's a lot of tokens that you are putting, that like that's taking a lot of compute. And so that's how they're like essentially controlling, like for if someone's like a paid user or not a paid user, they can like limit the amount of tokens that you can input in any given time. That's what that means for you.
Super fascinating. And this test time scaling, it seems like all of this, I mean, pre-training, post-training, and test time scaling is all basically providing tokens to AI and then using those tokens to like further train their models.
Yes. Because
so I guess yeah, go ahead.
Well, what you were just asking about, like the self-driving, if you have think about all the self-driving video out there, right, that's coming in, but at the same time, now the model can say, okay, this video did X, Y, and Z at this intersection. Let's go take those tokens or let's take that right turn that they made, and let's go reason and look at all the other information that we have and create new scenarios that aren't so we're creating new, that's what the test time scaling is doing, is creating new data based on all of these billions of scenarios that can be run. And a lot of them will be trash and junk, but it's creating more. It's essentially, this is how, like, if you hear like we're running out of data for AI, this is where you're creating new data. Because now it's exponential. Like, you can just run every scenario for every single thing that's happening.
Okay, so that, what you just said right there, my question is that not a simulated reality?
I think it's, yeah, I mean, that's how you get there.
Yeah, and so if that's possible, like we see the roadmap to get there, that just screams like you use the data from the factory floor on creating the forklift to like provide more tokens. But at what point do you just have like a simulated factory in the first place, and like all of this stuff is just happening, in a simulation? I'm full on board that this is a simulation that we live in right now. I think you really don't have any option other than, like, if it's possible, then either we're the first ones to ever do it, which to me seems highly unlikely, or I think Elon Musk says this, or we currently live in a simulation, or we will destroy ourselves before we end up accomplishing this goal. And so if you don't want to believe that we'll destroy ourselves, either we're the first ones to do it, or we are already simulated, and just odds are it's probably already happened, and we're just like living in a tokenized universe. That's super fascinating.
I have a slight tangent, but less of a simulation. It just made me think when you talk about self-driving cars. I think AI is it's gonna change all industries, right? Everyone pretty much knows that. But like, I just started thinking about, like, how's car insurance gonna work when you're not the one driving the car? You think
this is a tangent? Like, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but they'll make a market out of it basically, and it will just
I agree. Well, you think you'll have to have
so like
insurance?
I think in the future,
Because
like
right
everyone
now,
owns,
my
like,
insurance covers me no matter what car I'm driving, right? Like, as long as I have car insurance.
so the owner of the self-driving car that like you're in will be the one that's insuring it. The reality, I think, is that eventually people who choose to, which will really like suck because I like to drive a car, but I think eventually people who choose to drive their own car will pay higher insurance. They will be forced to pay higher insurance because self-driving will get to the point where it's proven to be much safer.
If they have a 10-year period or whatever, and they look at it and they find that self-driving cars are in like significantly less accidents, then yeah, the rates would definitely go up. And it'll be good for insurance companies who don't want to now pay anything for it's another market for them, since they are going to struggle with all these natural disasters and stuff that is going on, and they're leaving these, the coasts pretty much.
The insurance industry is like huge, and post 2008, I think what was it, like American Insurance Company? Insurance was a pretty huge part of the 2008 financial crisis, in a story that isn't told quite as much as just like, the housing and mortgage and, all that, but just general insurance. And insurance has gotten only bigger. I don't understand a whole lot about it, but just because there's a whole lot to understand and to be confused about, and insurance is boring, so I'm never going to research that. I'm just going to
I think when you get to self-driving, when you get to self-driving, and you have less accidents, less payouts, insurance premiums will have to come down. I think it actually could be bad for the
Will they be able
industry.
to push the liability off to the owner of the car, though? Because if you're not the one driving it, how can it be your fault if it gets into an accident? Wouldn't the liability fall on the manufacturer at that point? Law.
I'm sure there'll be a court case. There probably already has been a court. There'll be some type of case around that. I'm sure today, like you sign off your life basically when you turn on self-driving. But I'm sure Tesla's probably been sued for, like, there's been deaths of Teslas, doing, or at least wrecks for sure.
Yeah, like how
full
is that your fault? You're
self-driving.
just a passenger. That's like you getting sued for your Uber driver
I'm sure that
getting
it's
in an
gone to court
accident
somewhere.
in the vehicle.
It's a good question.
So,
All right.
so part of this tokenizing the world kind of thing, I saw this interesting article from Wired. Kate Crawford wrote the article, and she's talking about AI agents, which is a buzzword that I'm hearing a lot more at the end of 2024, early 2025, is like AI agents is going to be the thing of 2025. Which is an agent is, I think, Austin, similar to what you were talking about, where they can actually reason and make decisions beyond what they're actually coded to do. And so a personal AI agent would be one, like for me, that would be incredible just to have a personal manager that keeps track of everything that I'm doing, all of my correspondence, and I can, it can surface relevant information whenever I need it to, and, handle my email, handle my calendar, handle basically everything like that, and allow me to spend all of my time just actually producing and actually creating things, whereas all of the administrative tasks completely offloaded to AI is very seductive to me, to have an AI that just knows everything about me and then can handle it all for me so that I can just like live and just like very seamlessly just do things. And I've got an AI that's trailing behind me and like just picking up the pieces and organizing stuff and helping me manage it all. But this article, it talks about the psychological and the political and ethical questions involved with that. It's sort of like the movie Her, which is, I forget who's in that.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Who's in the movie Her? Have you guys
No,
seen
but I
it?
know it. It's like an AI assistant who kind of just is like, it's like a Siri, but like for your life.
Yeah. Yeah, and he falls in love with his AI assistant, like has an earbud and she's in his ear all the time and he falls in love with her. It's a good movie and it's pretty timely for right now, so I'd suggest you watch it at some point. It doesn't have to be super high on your list, but it's a good movie. But to have an assistant that knows everything about you, then the question is the kind of information and the kind of managing that it does for you. And it can, like, if you rely on this thing so heavily to pick up all of your information and then tell you what's important, then you are, you don't know what it's not telling you. And so then what kind of biases are you being introduced to, or where is that leading you as a person, or where is it leading, a country or a culture? And because you've offloaded a lot of that agency to an AI. So being able to trust this AI system to be able to manage that data in a way that's neutral and that doesn't have any sort of biases is, she says, it's an erosion of autonomy. And so to tie it back to this token system, if I had an AI agent today, I would be using it for everything. Like I use ChatGPT for everything now. Like I just use it for research. I use it to edit emails. I use it just to brainstorm. And so the amount of information that ChatGPT has learned about me in the 2 years that I've been using it is pretty astonishing. And if I had an AI agent that was more incorporated into my life, it would know that much more information about me. So to tie it back to Austin's discussion about tokenizing the world, this to me is sort of tokenizing like my world. And so then to be able to know everything about how I think and what's important to me, what I'm doing, when, and the more that you rely on these systems, the more that you're basically tokenizing yourself. And then what's that going to spit back out at you? It's a really fascinating future because these systems are so powerful and so useful that it's going to be, for me personally, Matt, I know you said that you're not going to get the chip, but I think for a lot of people, it's going to be really hard not to use these tools because they're just that advanced and that helpful that, like, it's how would you go without it at a certain point? And I think that, there's all kinds of questions you can go from there. Like, what would you do without it after you've had it? Would we just collapse? We don't know how to live our lives without our assistant doing everything for us. yeah, it's very dystopian, and it's 2025 is what they're all saying. 2025 is the year of the AI agent, and I think AI in general has changed the world pretty drastically, and to have agents who are actually doing things rather than just being a research tool like what AI is right now, is uh, it's another significant change from like we've gone through so many significant changes. So I think we need to be really aware about like what these tools do and what they're doing to us psychologically and culturally, and to talk about how they should be used and whether or not they should be used, I guess, too.
I guess I would need to see this, like these first AI companions, because when someone says, "Oh yeah, this AI companion can handle your calendar," for instance, that was an example. Is as simple as someone sending me a text saying, "Hey, you want to come over tomorrow night at 7 to go, watch something?" Like, does that mean the AI pops in onto my phone and says, "Hey, do you want me to add this to your calendar?" Is that the type of like, what does an AI assistant mean? Is that all phone related? Like everything happens on your phone, and you're just getting like they say 2025. This has to be soon.
I think it's funny. It's funny to think about. I just had this thought of you have a robot that lives with you and does everything, and part of their job is to sit down at your computer and schedule your calendar out. Like that's not how it's going to go. It will just.
And then the robot's going to be like technology these days.
Their computer. This computer
Damn computer's not working.
Yeah. No, it's gonna just like there'll be. I think AI is for everything. One of them will be owned by Google. I think Google will do really well in AI exactly for this because Google has your email, your docs, your calendar, all of this information about you. And so when someone sends you an email to ask about getting a certain file that happens to be in Google Docs, it'll just automatically give it to them. Like, I don't know, that's like one random example. So like that, I think you'll have like technical like AI within all the apps and stuff that we use every day. That'll be different from like the physical AI that we also will interact with, which would be like the robot bartender.
I view like a longer term AI as something that's sort of persistent. Like maybe it's in a wearable glasses, or maybe it's an earbud like it is in her, or maybe it's a chip like we sort of joke that Elon Musk is going to put in your head, but something that's sort of persistently with you and can basically handle anything that you want it to. Glasses make sense to me so that it can see what you're seeing. We're primarily visual creatures, and so put a camera and a microphone on it, and this AI now can pretty much experience your entire life as you are, reading your texts. Like it could probably just, that's interesting. I'm just thinking about that now, like how Tesla went away from radar and LiDAR and went all in on cameras for their AI training, saying that humans are primarily visual creatures, and so we're going to train our AI using visuals. And so if you had a AI assistant that was primarily just visual, just looking and hearing to the same things that you are, just reading the texts that come up on your phone, or hearing the person pop into your office saying, "Are you free for drinks tonight?" Like, the AI just, it knows, and you can be like, "Yeah, help me out with this." And
this is the digital twin. This is like the digital twin concept. Is if I could make a copy of myself that is a digital thing, right? And it sees through maybe like glasses to start, like sees what I see, but then also can compare that with all the other things that it has seen, that it is trained on, that even I'm not trained on, right? Now it can make all these different decisions for me and like reason about how I should respond to that email or respond to that text message or something. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's pretty simplistic. Eventually, like you'll probably have like a twin robot of yourself, and like it will watch you, brush your teeth or do the dishes, and then it will go do the dishes, not only by knowing how you did the dishes, but by knowing how everyone else did the dishes. And so it will be really good at doing the dishes.
At what point, the question for me becomes, at what point do you have an existence then? Like, it becomes very matrixy. Like, why even respond to this email if AI can like do it better than me, or AI can just literally do everything that I can do, but with the knowledge of the whole universe, on top of it. Like, why don't we just let AI live its life? And like, what am I here for? Like, what is my purpose with AI now? I think that's a big question that people are going to be wrangling with in the years to come. And Austin, I think this actually ties in pretty nicely with the article that you had on white collar jobs or just job rates. I think that's going to be something that we're going to be facing more and more in the future, probably tied into AI agents.
Don't
I
you
think that's
think
related.
you're kind of talking about like AI replacing you and like this twin concept? And I feel like as AI becomes more prevalent, we use it as this tool. I feel like I would never use it for my social aspect because we're gonna have so much more free time. You'd think that's the one aspect of your life. If you're concerned that like this is the Matrix now, like the one aspect of your life that would still be real then is you doing your socializing with like I wouldn't have an AI text for me. I don't want someone like if I'm texting Austin like asking about how life's going, I don't want like my AI to do that. That'd be weird. Like that's one thing that grounds you to reality is like your interactions with human beings, right? That's what makes you human, relationships with others. And if you were to pass that off to your AI assistant, then like what's the point? Like why would you even do that? So I don't see people taking advantage of that too much. It'll definitely be a tool used in business or like, service reps, like their jobs will probably be gone because the AI was like already, you're already call somebody and you're either talking to somebody from India or you're talking to a computer. It's like those are your two options.
And in a similar vein, because if I'm playing devil's advocate to your point, Sam, like if AI is able to do these things, you almost have this revolution of focusing back on oneself and finding like who you are with, like Matthew kind of said, this free time. You're able to focus on like, could there be a swing back to being healthy? Could there be like, how can I make myself better? And like, now I have time to go to the gym all the time because I've saved 2 hours a day or an hour a day via this AI tool. And maybe you could do like meditation or like you do all these things that personally make your life better because the AI is doing this. The question of like what's my purpose in life is still out there at this point. AI could make that a little tougher because I mean, again, because I've been working with AI a lot, I find it as such a help. So if I did have an idea that I'm like, oh, I can help a lot of people out, like if we're going to this token area where now it can help me build that idea that much faster because it's figured out all the scenarios to make this idea work, like you could almost argue them you could accomplish what your desired goals are in life even faster, like so I think there is that kind of the devil's advocate of like, could this be an improvement to humanity in a way? Like obviously that's the positive way to think about it, but it has to be used correctly, and you have to have the motivation. I think that's kind of the motivation to do that's very human, and that's obviously not easy to come by.
There's a book I read a couple of years ago called AI Superpowers by Kai-Fu Lee, and I highly recommend that you read this book. He has nailed exactly, this is in 2018, so before AI was really in the public lexicon, has nailed a lot of these kinds of issues and talks a lot about China and how far ahead China was and is in this AI and data world, which is a whole separate conversation. But his ultimate takeaway is exactly what both you and Matt and Justin are saying, is that if you have this world where AI can do everything from, being a lawyer to a doctor, or even now factory workers, like doing the physical work in our day-to-day lives, what does that leave for humans? Is it art? What is it? His ultimate takeaway is that the only thing that AI can't do is provide that human to human touch that people need. What this will drive us back towards is more of a human centric way of living, where maybe the kinds of jobs that we're doing are caring for our elderly parents or doing bedside care for people in the hospital. Just anything that requires like the touch of human connection, which he argues is going to be a really positive change for humanity, to just be laser focused just back in on ourselves and each other rather than sort of this external like capitalistic world that you work until you're 65 and then you die.
That's fine, but yeah. I'm interested in making money and not just being beholden to whatever universal basic income we decide
Right.
everyone is worthy of getting. So that's why I think that you have to just get so like focused on understanding how AI works and being able to use it to basically outperform everyone else. When the calculator came out, the people who knew how to use the calculator outperformed their peers, left them behind. Like that's the reality of what's going to happen. And that's why I'm like trying to just immerse myself in as much of it as possible, because it's the people who will, my article goes into this and I'll like talk about it now, but like the people who know how to use these things and are controlling the AI, at least for now, are the ones who will be able to stay ahead and not get taken over by it, and taken over me in the way of like losing your job, essentially.
So I have a question before you jump into your article, just based off what you said there. Do you, I think in the near term, you're 100% right. Like there is a lot of advantage to be gained by utilizing AI as a tool. In the maybe a slightly longer term, would you still be interested in making money if you could have anything that you wanted, like not just universal basic income, but AI is doing all of the jobs, it's mining the mines, it's producing the products, it's doing the accounting for all of it. Like there's no human involvement in any of the production that is going on in the entire world. Like there's just, humans don't have any jobs. Let's go that far into the future, because AI can literally manage everything that we do today. Like, are you still interested in making money? And then what is your purpose if like you can just have whatever you want, because like it's not human labor. Like ultimately money is representation of humans' time, but if no humans are involved, then what value does money have?
The only problem I have, like your assumption, I think it's maybe possible, but it's like a long ways in the future. What would have to happen is the cost of energy would have to go to zero. Right, because like what you're saying basically is that there's no economy anymore. Like there's no, like what determine, like okay, if the AI are doing all the inventions of they're the new creator class, they're the people who are like not the people, they're the thing that is coming up with the next great thing that will be consumed, and they're going to create it and produce it and code it and everything.
Or maybe we are the creator class, but AI just does everything from that point on. Like you just dream up whatever you want and then it just happens.
I think that is at least Sam, yeah.
That's the more near term, like realistic thing. Is now there's this explosion of creativity and the ability of everyone to build things that we didn't think were possible,
like our intro song, for example.
Exactly. Someone used to get paid $5,000 or more to make that intro song, and now we just did it for free. And that sucks for the guy that we would have hired and paid $5,000, because I'm investing a lot in this podcast. I would have easily given someone $5,000 to make our intro, but we didn't have to, and that's the point, and that's great. And now here we are creating something that we didn't have before. Like I think that's more of the realistic example. If I doubt this podcast ever, returns us a bunch of money. But the point is,
definitely
that
cutting that out.
Maybe it does. And maybe we were able to do it, and we wouldn't have been able to do it before because none of us wanted to spend $5,000 to make an intro. And so like that's, I think, the more realistic thing of what happens, at least in like probably our lifetime. Because I think humans are still going to be in control of trying to decide like what are the things that the market desires. Because like we're going to be the consumers still. So until you get to like an economy of the AI, which is really like that is the simulation, when like there's an economy within the new world. Anyway, I'm going too far down the rabbit hole.
Real quick before you change though, on the intro music, and I woke up, I listen to the radio when I wake up. That's my alarm. I listen to NPR. And it was a Saturday a couple weeks ago, and there was a producer who was on talking about these AI music generators, similar to the one that I used to make our intro song. And he's talking about how he used to get paid to make like a Jamaican jingle sound like this, and how much it would cost to get an actual vocalist to be able to produce this. Now he's struggling with, am I going to be out of a job? And all of these questions, because you used to have to hire him for $5,000, but now Sam can make 5 versions of it for free within 5 minutes, and it's 5 times better than what he could produce. But his comment was at the end, using these tools, he would input some of his ideas that he only had 70% of the way done, but couldn't quite get there. Like he just had some writer's block. And now he's using these tools to revisit those and use AI to sort of, it's like the world's best co-writer who's always awake and has access to all of the musical production tricks and the best singers and vocalists. And he would use AI to then flesh out these ideas. And now he said he's more excited than ever to be a producer, not because he thinks he's going to make any money. He's kind of certain that he's out of a job going forward, but he's got all of these projects and all of this music that he's so excited about that he is now going back to revisit and just create using art. And so to your point, just using these tools to actually be the creator, to do the things that you are most interested in, that was his ultimate takeaway. It was, maybe I don't have a job now, but now I'm more excited than I've ever been to be a musician because I've got this tool to be able to create my wildest dreams, to be able to actually do it and to do it quickly and finish these things. It's exciting. It's exciting for me as a, amateur everything, and to have now a professional on my side that's practically free. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think like what that guy has going against him, like he's definitely out of a job because like all of the AI is going to try to make it, like the goal is to make it as user-friendly as possible. And like the people who, like, it doesn't actually matter if you know how to play an instrument. That doesn't give you any leg up in the AI world. It matters if you know how to interact with the AI and how to like prompt and how to get what you want out of it.
How to make something good.
The ideas, I mean, I don't think he's totally screwed. I mean, if he is an ideas guy who has these 70% projects, I mean, there's no reason that you can't, like, he came up with those 70%. So he's close to becoming an idea creator, an architect of sorts. And I think those, like you said, creativity, architecture mind are going to be the ones that can just, if they are like you, Austin, you combine an architecture mind with someone who's curious, that's going to be the most like deadly in a good way in the coming years, because then you have someone that has a great base, maybe not super technical, Austin, like you're not a super technical individual just because that's not really your sphere, but you're an ideas guy. So now this is leveling the playing field unlike anything that's ever come before.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter. Ideas are going to be the future. And a drive. You gotta have the drive. If you don't have the drive, this is still not going to help you. Like, you can still use AI and be bogged down with, I guess, a bug, for lack of a better word, for hours. And it can be draining. But if you have that drive, you're going to figure it out. Like, there's some things like you're not going to make a flying car, but like, you're going to figure out why your website's not working. Like,
you've got the best chance you've ever had to make a flying car now,
That's right.
I always say they do it in the movies, like just show AI those models.
I mean, yeah, I that's exactly right. So I guess like that's my one, that would be my push against what you said, Sam, is like, I still believe that there will be a class system. Maybe it is just driven by motivation and like design, like the same way it is today. Unfortunately, some people like are fine chilling on whatever program they're chilling on and for whatever reason, and some people are like really out there going to get it. I don't think that that's going to go away. I just think that probably AI might like exacerbate the gap potentially.
So who are the winners more succinctly? Like as Justin was saying, is it the minds? It's the ideas. Sort of super users of AI are going to be the winners. Because AI can beat anybody else. Entrepreneurs. Okay.
Entrepreneurs and the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, those are clearly going to be the winners. Yeah.
They're already in a pretty good spot.
That's a different league. That's a totally different league.
Yeah. That would be a good topic for another. The next one is like how this like AI boom is different than the internet boom, and like how the biggest companies are going to win AI. It's not going to be some little guy. But I guess, so if I go into the article that I had from the journal, basically what it was just saying was that white collar workers are having a harder time finding a job than they have had in the recent history, and that it's taking them longer. This could just be like a blip in a moment in time of like people are uncertain about the economy a little bit, hiring less. Obviously, like I think that's a real thing, that like people are tightening up the belt a lot. But I also think that as they're doing that, people are realizing that you can do more with less. And a lot of that is driven by the AI tools that are just at the cusp of even touching really the majority of white collar work. So I just wanted to kind of get your takes on the fact that that is happening, but then also the fact that like what, you know, I don't know, I don't want to rehash the same conversation we just had, because it's kind of goes to the same place of like, what do those people do? Like, what's the solution? Is this the beginning of the slippery slope of mass unemployment driven by the fact that people just are going to stop hiring? And that is the first wave of all of this, is that if a role gets vacated, you're told, go solve it. You know, you can't refill that role. Go solve it with like the efficiency tools that we have in
Is
front
it going
of
to
us.
be keep your most talented on staff and then squeeze more out of your most talented to use AI? Or is it going to be, fire, like lower your costs as much as you can, work bare bones, and make sure AI can get the job done? Like it's going to, like, the question is like, is this going to exacerbate the best in a company? Are they going to be the only ones that are left? Like, is that going to be basically you just hold on to your best employees and then cut? Is that basically where you think that's going to go? Or do you even hold on to your best employees? You just kind of bank on AI doing this?
That's what if I owned a company, I would cut the bottom 30% of performers and tell everybody else to get as efficient as possible. And if I cut too much, I'll add a couple back. But
that kind of feels like that's what's going on. Like giant hiring right after COVID for some reason. I still don't get why. I guess a giant demand because everybody was, inside their houses and whatever. We saw every company hiring, like literally everybody was hiring way over normal headcount. And then everybody's shocked that now they're firing individuals. Like, yes, this article points out it's harder for them to find work. I think it's largely just a result of the stupid hiring that was happening after COVID. Like, why did people assume the demand after COVID was the normal continuation of the graph that fell to death, during COVID? They're like, oh my God, we have to hire over what we had before COVID. So you now have a ton of people. Sure, it hit the spike in demand for about half a year, maybe a year. But then it just went back down to like what the graph was doing. I'm wondering if this article is still on that tailwind of just like companies were very poor, like they were poor in HR and hired too many people. Like, is
you think we're
that
normalizing?
Yeah, I think we're
vaccinated.
normalizing. Like, I didn't understand those hirings coming out of COVID. They did not make sense to me because did a lot of people get fired during COVID? I thought they all got PP. What was that, like PPP programs to keep everybody
A lot of
on
people were
staff?
LOA'd.
That's true. Yeah, they were temporarily not working, but like they weren't fired. I still don't know an explanation today that fits 100% what happened.
So if all these people get fired because AI takes over, anybody have any ideas on what we do? Like what those people are going to do? Like, do you think there will be an influx of like relationship type jobs? Because that's like the only thing left. Like the technical stuff is gone, so there's going to be more sales jobs and like project managers and like that sort of thing. But I feel like if you fired people, like people are getting laid off now are like in sales, because sales that's just a constant job that gets laid off. Like they hire more when they're doing well, and then when the company retracts, they fire a bunch of people, and those are usually the first to go. But I feel like
I think it'd be like customer service, like think about customer service people, like design, like digital designers. Like there's a lot of corporate jobs.
well, I feel like digital.
But did this article say what type of white collar workers they were?
It said like everything except like government and healthcare seemed to be stronger.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And it said basically like the crux of it was like it tracked this person, said like they couldn't even go get, like they tried to then go get like hourly work somewhere, and like they were like seen as overqualified and like couldn't even get a job at like the grocery store.
That's their own fault, dude. If you can't get a job at a grocery store, don't hand them a resume that says you're a software developer for 15 years.
Yeah.
Like, make up a resume and say
overqualified.
that like you were just
It's like
working in a factory.
not people skill.
Like, that's on them. I hate that. I can't get a job at a supermarket.
But the thing it also says is that also takes away then the benefits that they're getting from the government. If they go get like a really low wage job, they'd rather stay on the unemployment that they're getting than go take a low wage job. So I think you're probably going to have to like, again, I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't believe that AI has quite bled its way into everything that the majority of corporations outside of Silicon Valley are interacting with. I don't think it's gotten embedded enough yet to say that this is necessarily a leading indicator of it, but I think it's possible, and like it's gotta be where things go.
It could be on the I'm with you. I would say this article is jumping the gun, is my first impression of that. Because, like you said, AI, you have these companies, like there are still stories of companies firing a bunch of people when AI became really hot at early last year. And now there's some companies that are like, oh crap, we kind of actually need some of those workers back. Like it's nowhere near, like you said, outside of Silicon Valley, no way that this is actually having the impact that they think it is. I mean, there are big companies in the US. Like you see, who was it? Like, was it Facebook or like when they said like 5,000 individuals were laid off from one company, right? That inflates the numbers. Like that's a lot of people looking for work. But that's one company. Like that's one company that maybe has figured it out, but the majority of companies.
Yeah, I mean,
small.
like those were the easiest cases I think of, like Twitter and like Facebook. Like they've done like huge riffs to get rid of a lot of people, and like they've been able to still do the same work with a lot less. And so like the more that people realize that, and those were probably like really bloated organizations, but organizations that are less bloated today but are able to realize these efficiency gains through these new tools, it's only a matter of time before, like, the reality is, like, the job I do in finance, like one day the tools that like are that like the ERP systems like SAP and all of like and SQL, like, Snowflake and everything, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to just tell Snowflake that has all of your data tables already in it, all of your data from the company, right? Just say, hey, why are my sales lower in Arkansas this week? And it should be able to tell you. Today, you tell an analyst that has a whole team around, like, it costs a lot to answer that question, is the reality of it.
Like the data's there, it just takes a mind. Now, I don't know what type of model that would be. Would that fit one of the models you saw in the video? Like is that just still like ChatGPT? Just give it a ton of information and see where it goes?
I mean, it can analyze every single data point that you had around sales in Arkansas over the last month.
And weather.
Right. And all the information that it knows from the internet and from other businesses probably that are have their data stored in Snowflake. And like, and, which is way better than what I could produce. I could say, well, I don't know. We sold less,
Yeah, what takes you
we sold less cookies this month. Maybe we'll get it back next month.
3 months to come back with that response versus,
right.
maybe a 24-hour cycle where it just reads all the information.
If that.
And so it'll be about people who can communicate and think like the strategy is like where you're going to like then win, and being able to use those tools to an advantage is what you have to get to. And if you can't do that, you're not going to make it.
I think the wave that we're seeing now in white collar jobs is not just a normalization from COVID. And I think that there's less demand for white collar jobs. And I'm sort of in the same boat as you, Austin, that I don't see a reason why that isn't the direction that we're headed, and that's not possible today. Even though, Justin, I see your point that I don't think AI has really permeated a lot of smaller companies. It's more like Twitter and Facebook and some of the larger companies that are really utilizing it and seeing scale from not having as many workers doing the same amount of work. But I really, it's the same question that we were talking about earlier. It's going to be the best users of AI that are going to win. And so maybe all of those other companies aren't using AI, but that's why they're going to lose to all of the companies that are using AI. And then they won't get as much business because it takes your company 5 times as long to get a scale back on like reduced sales in Arkansas as my company does. And my company does it with quite a few less employees. So I think that's happening. Even just look at like ChatGPT and its threat on lawyers, like large language models with law. These AIs know all of the case law that exists and can spit out a perfect
tool, though, right?
not
Law at the end
dissertation,
of the
yeah,
day
whatever.
is arguing, and they don't want robots arguing for if someone's.
Yes, they do. They totally do. They're going to be so much better than any lawyer you could train.
Yeah.
Like the judge. At the
interesting
end of the day,
thing
it's
is
not going to
that
be an AI
lawyers
that makes the decision. It's going to be a judge, because then you're taking it out of the hands of human beings. And like at the end of the day, when you're sentencing someone for the chair, you're not going to leave it up to a computer. You're just not.
That's interesting because, like, part of me wants to think if you train these models to be just totally human centric and like truth focused, then like remove all biases, just try and like gather all data. Maybe I almost do want a computer handling the judicial system. Maybe I do want something that is like has all of this information and can be much more informed and fair about doing things. You know, you have all these questions about who's programming and what biases to have, but
like you have to know, like, I don't want to.
Wouldn't that be in the model though?
Yes. So that's like I don't want to go down the far like Sam. That's interesting, but it's like far fetched of like a judge that's a computer. Think about this. Justin is being sentenced to the chair, and I am his defender.
It's a rough way to go.
Yes, right. And I'm gonna go say the judge is Matthew. Let's go take every transcript from the closing arguments that Judge Matthew has heard where he found the defendant not guilty. And let me use that to train. And let me use all the other information of every other case where someone's been going to the chair and they got not guilty. Like, what was the strategy used? Like, all that information is way more powerful than anything me as like an individual attorney could come up with. And so I'm going to use that as a tool to help me.
And guess what? Justin's not going to be on the chair because of that.
Side, and then the reality is I'm going to be able to do all that I'm going to be able to do all that in a 10th of the time. And so now I can handle 10 death row cases, and they can fire the 9 other people that were in my cohort at law school because they're not using AI, and I can handle all their business.
I don't disagree that like you'll be able to get rid of people, but I think in terms of law and deciding life and death, they're not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to, like, the AI will be a tool for the lawyer to make the arguments, because then the other side also, like your example, right? You said one side's going to make the argument. There's another side. The other guy's going to do the same thing.
Do the same thing.
AI's arguing with each other.
Exactly.
And so at the end of the day, someone needs to make. Yeah,
and then you have an AI judge.
So I don't think they're going to do the AI judge. Like, someone needs to make the decision. Both of them are going to be using tools based on the judges, like you said.
Yeah, but the judge is gonna use AI too, because the judge doesn't want to fucking read the 200-page document that got slapped on his desk. He's gonna throw that sucker in the AI and say, "Give me a couple of bullet points about it."
And that's where I think it won't go. That's why I don't think it'll be in the judicial system as much as you think. Because if you're taking it out of the hands of human beings, then it's not just.
They're already doing it. They're doing it in Congress to read the bill. Like, they're using Congress is using it to read the bills before they vote on it. They're not reading that.
That's why they shouldn't be like more than 10 pages long. That's a totally different political
tool they should be
like,
using, because they already don't read the bills. So at least now they're getting some sort of summary from.
And it's nice as citizens too. Like, now I can have an opportunity to understand what's going on because I've got something that can digest it all for me and actually see what they're voting on.
Yeah, I asked it. This is a good transition to Matthew's article about farming, but I asked it what the farm subsidies were in the most recent bill. You were so interested in talking about farms. I'm sure it's something that's really going to keep our listeners really locked in here on our very first episode.
Our listeners are.
Tell me about the crops.
I appreciated the variation.
We need variety. This has been 2 hours of AI.
I actually was listening to a podcast on this, and I actually read an article. It's a different article I posted, but I was reading a separate article about the dairy subsidies that the government's been providing for decades, even though our dairy consumption has been going down drastically over the last couple decades. I was like, that seems odd. Why are we funding so much dairy if we're eating less dairy? And it's kind of, the only answer was because we've just like propped up the industry forever, and they don't want to like
pull the subsidies away because government hates changing anything, but just do it forever. And so, but apparently during the Cold War, there was a big competition going on between the United States and Russia, as everyone knows, and Russia, or the Soviet Union at the time, was struggling to feed their population, and they were very confused as to how the U.S. was able to feed their population so well. The U.S. basically said it was capitalism. It's our markets. The fact that we have competition working between all of our farmers is why we're able to feed our population and everyone's still thriving. Whereas Russia had to buy grain from the United States, which was like right around the late 80s, early 90s, which was kind of like the beginning of their downfall. And they're like, oh wow, for like Gorbachev came to the US and he was basically had to ask for us to like give them grain so that they could make their food. And that was when they knew like, oh, okay, the Soviet Union's probably gonna fall. Like our system's working, your system's not. And the US played that off like it's capitalism, but in reality, it was more similar to communism or socialism, as the US was subsidizing all of the farmers to make all that food. Basically, the citizens were all paying the taxes to then give to these farmers to then make the food. It's just that wasn't very apparent. And basically, ever since then, we've been doing it. We've been subsidizing. Farming is one of the largest subsidies that the US does. And you could argue, I mean, I see both sides to it and like how some of it's good and some of it's bad. Like obviously, if you're a government, you want your population to be fed. So having the population pay through their taxes to have these goods produced can be a good thing. So you don't run out of food. But due to these subsidies, from what I could tell, is they don't tend to review them very often. So every decade, in my opinion, every decade or every maybe 5 years, you should be looking at these subsidies and determining if really is this something we should be doing and subsidizing and propping up. Like I said, in the dairy industry, like the government subsidized cheese in like the 70s and then maybe it was the 80s. And then because they subsidized it so much, every dairy farmer produced like a shit ton of cheese, and the government then had to buy all the surplus of cheese because they asked everybody to make it, and then no one wanted to buy it. So
They
then the government's
subsidize the
like, well, there's a
production.
huge surplus. I guess we'll buy it. And so there's like
That's a
a
racket.
bunch of rappers have rapped about government cheese like in the 90s in their songs. It's because the government started just like giving the cheese away. Like there's this big bunker in like Iowa that has like a shit ton of cheese, like cheese wheels, because they need somewhere to store it all. And they start just like giving it away. And so, I mean, it's silly, right? Like the fact that we're paying farmers to make something that then we're buying because they made too much of it. And in the grand scheme of things, the large government subsidies has led to the consolidation of farms. And a lot of people would argue that family farms have died out because of these subsidies, because they give the money to these large dairy producers, these large corn producers, grain producers, because it's easier to regulate that way if you only have like a couple industry or a couple farms that are doing everything, as opposed to determining there's like 15,000 farmers. Now we got to determine like who's going to get what amount of money. It's a lot simpler if it's consolidated. So that's led to worse health outcomes, I think, for the United States in general. Like a really interesting thing is like, have you ever looked at remember the old triangle, that the food pyramid they would have, and how the bottom was like all grain and like bread and corn, and you're like looking at, when you ask a dietitian, they're like, this makes no sense. Like, why were we telling everyone to eat a bunch of bread? It's because those are the industries that the United States government was funding. Those are the subsidized. I mean, it's a surplus of all these goods. So like, eat them up. Like, we're making a bunch of it. Keep eating
Eat it.
And so that is a big reason they subsidize corn heavily, and that is a big reason why all of our foods have high fructose corn syrup. They're like, we have this huge surplus of corn. Why don't we take this surplus and use it for something else? And at the time, they thought great, like, because they didn't know all the side effects to high fructose corn syrup. So they were like, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But they were like, we've got this huge surplus of corn. Why don't we use it and turn it into a liquid that we can use to sweeten? Because before they used to use powders, and powders were messy and harder to administer to foods. And so liquids go down easy. They're easier to produce. We had all this extra corn. They're like, we'll just make high fructose corn syrup, and it's great. And at the time, everything was about ease and quickness, right? About like creating products, especially in like during the Cold War. And so they were able to produce all this stuff, and everybody was eating it up. They were loving it. You know, you were able to produce so many different types of goods because they were just different ways to like sweeten all these food products. And over the long term, we realized that those are what have led to a lot of terrible health outcomes, a lot of like obesity in our nation, which is why we're one of the fast nations, if not the fastest in the world. And now we're kind of getting to this realization, I think, with our generation, where we're taking a look at maybe this wasn't a good thing to do. Maybe we do want more of a free market when it comes to our food. We want more competition so that we have better health outcomes for our next generation. Because I would say we're definitely more, like, I'm not the healthiest eater, but I'm definitely more health conscious than my parents or my grandparents ever were. A lot of people go to the grocery store and are looking at the back of the box. Before that, all they were looking at was the price. And now price isn't the biggest constraint when it comes to the grocery store. For a lot of people it is, but there's a good portion of the population that are more interested in what am I actually putting in my body than like how much it's going to cost me. So that's the.
So are you pro just like zero government subsidies when it comes to food, or just generally even? But let's keep it on
No,
food
I'm
for
not
now, I guess.
anti-subsidy. I don't know if I came down on one side or the other on this article. It was more of intriguing to me to hear about how much we subsidize, especially things that we don't necessarily like. I think it's a good thing, honestly, for the government to subsidize food because it's like that's like one of the few essentials. It's kind of a human right, right? Like food or water, right? But like then the government paying for it is just us paying for it, right? I mean, it's the taxes. So they're coming from.
Inefficiently paying for it. The government paying for it is us inefficiently paying for it and creating a fake market that is a disaster.
And subsidies are sort of like tariffs, where once you have them in place, they're really hard to remove.
Is like I don't think the subsidy's wrong, but I think there needs to be a better way of administering them, or there needs to be a better review process. So, like I said, like they've been subsidizing dairy incredibly for like decades. It's like why we don't really drink that much milk. At most, it's the beef, I guess, but it's like we don't need to be doing that. If there's less of a demand for it, we don't need the government to just be buying it just to prop up all these dairy farmers. Like it should be shifting to other food products if we don't want dairy. And so like you're right. That's where the inefficiency is. It's like the government doesn't know necessarily when to do it. So I would say if you're going, I like the idea of subsidies for like grain. Like we're always going to need grain. Like some things that are like essential, especially if we had some sort of like I don't know, like I guess COVID was a good example, or like some major natural disaster of some sort. You want your government to have all these reserves and be able to like have food industries that need to stay around. But we don't need to be propping up like dairy, which is like not an essential food. You know, that's just more of like a want. And there was like a bunch of them, so they didn't want them to fall apart, so they just kind of kept doing it. But like chicken, I don't know, like chicken farm, like that's a good one that I think I'm okay with the government subsidizing. Like we eat more chicken than like any nation in the world.
But who they subsidize it from is also a problem. Because if they only subsidize it from, if all the subsidy goes to Tyson, like now they know they're getting that demand basically. They're getting guaranteed demand. It's like cost plus, which is a terrible model of like how to price something. But they know that they're going to get $10 for that chicken. Okay, so they're going to reduce that. I don't know if that's a lot or a little, but they're going to try to produce that chicken for as little as possible, or it's probably per pound, right? They're going to buy $5 per pound of chicken, and so they're incentivized now to get as much poundage for as little cost. And now I'm like a pure capitalist, so I kind of probably sound crazy, but this is where I will draw the hard line against being like purely capitalist is like that drives a bad behavior, and that's driven by this subsidy market, that if it wasn't there, that wouldn't be the case, and you would have it totally wrecks supply and demand. And it wrecks like the fair competition of producing best product. Like that's where like the subsidy should go, is who produces the best chicken, the best pound of chicken for a fair price.
That's where I like
not who can produce the most poundage of chicken for the best
Food
price.
is one of those things where that's why I'm saying I'm okay with there being some sort of subsidy, because that is a need. It's not a standard market where it's just like we don't, like, I don't know, like all these Silicon Valley companies, like none of those are necessary things for us to live. It's all like nice things to have. But for food, I'm okay with the government being in like things that the human beings need as a society to survive. But I do think there needs to be a more efficient way. And so, like you said, like there needs to be some sort, like if we're going to provide subsidies for food, there needs to be a quicker or shorter time period of when we're going to subsidize these products. Like we're not going to subsidize dairy for 40 years, right? Like you review it every 5 years, and like you have to, like, I don't know how you go about this, honestly. I haven't put that much thought into it, but there needs to be an analysis of the subsidy like every 5 years, and then that determines if we need to continue to subsidize it. But I don't know. I feel like if you pull the subsidies out completely, those big situations like a COVID or like during the Cold War where they needed to do it, if you don't do it, then society could collapse. Like people need their food. Like if you look at the greatest civilizations throughout history, is like that was their number one need, was like food. Like if you look at the Romans, like that was their always the hard part of like keeping their society together, is they had droughts and they ran out of food. They'd have to go to Egypt, and that's why they really created relationships with Egypt. It's because they would get grain from Egypt. They would have to export it because they need to keep their citizens happy. And so I'm okay with the government being involved a little bit in food. I just don't know the best way to do it.
And it's tough with a review process, because then you've got a power struggle, and whoever has, the Tyson group that's been receiving the subsidy is going to be able to, that maybe they're in the pocket of whatever politician is reviewing the policy. So maybe you need to have it tied to something that is harder to manipulate, but like, what would that be? Like,
hey,
just consumer demand?
By the way, Tyson, like this is the case, right? Tyson employs 138,000 people in my state. And if you take away these subsidies, they're going to have to fire, 30,000 people. And
it's all about the jobs.
But that's no reason not to do something just because it's an argument on one side of it.
That's right. I mean, this is like we should see if we can get RFK on the podcast to talk about this. This is his mission in life now.
The question of food quality, though, is a big one.
That would be the argument outside of like getting rid of the subsidies, is the quality would presumably go up if you stop subsidizing these foods, because people would start buying from the products that were healthier for us.
Prices would go up, but quality should also go. You're unleashing or allowing a fair market competition.
I do have a comment on that, Austin. In a pure capitalist environment, your drive is not necessarily to produce the best product; it's to produce the most value, and a lot of times that is by reducing the quality.
Right. And so that's where I'm for that. That's where I would be for government. That's where I think that there is a place for government in setting quality guidelines or setting like rules of some sort. And I haven't thought about this tremendously, but we can't sell like plastic and call it chicken because we can sell it for $1 a pound and have people eating plastic.
That's the tough part, because like ideally you want the government or some authoritative body to like mandate that, but then like I don't trust the government to know what is good chicken. And so how do you give the people who need the power, or how do you make the people who need the power the ones who also know how to make the best decision for you? I'm much more of an individual kind of empowering.
You don't subscribe to the idea that like people need to be told what to do, that they should be able to make their own decisions. Yeah. But I guess the counterpoint that I'll make to that is it's my greatest argument in all of this. The number one purchased item on food stamps is soda.
It's also some of the cheapest stuff you can purchase.
Addictive.
So
and the most addictive.
The
most addictive, the worst for you, and we are literally paying people to consume it. That addiction, like the people causing the addiction are in bed with the government at the same time. So like Coke is going to lobby with billions of dollars to not let food stamps restrict Coke from it. And like that's
Coke's a large part of our economy and a large part of our stock market.
Is that like a
you can't let Coke
subsidy
fail.
for Coke? food stamps? Could that be kind of like viewed as a
Yeah.
government subsidy in a way?
It
Like,
could.
if
I
that's
mean,
the
it's like
number one product
why do
being
we
bought,
restrict, like, you can't buy cigarettes or alcohol with food stamps, but you can buy Coke, or you can buy like Twinkies. Like, makes no sense. You should be able to buy, like, food stamps should
Why?
be, you may
We
buy
answered it. I
bread,
mean,
fruits, vegetables, and meats.
if we're taking away,
Like,
you're kind of taking away people's ability or agency, I guess is the word I'm looking for. You're taking away their agency to make up their own minds, and like
that's the
that would
counter.
be, especially because
Yeah.
like you only
Let them
require
make their
like
decisions.
chicken, meats, and stuff. It's like some of that stuff's expensive, where it's like food stamps is for as poor as the poor get. So you literally just want to, you're just giving them money to buy anything that you can consume.
Yeah, but here's the problem. I'm going to take a portion of my, now I know it's like going to be a small amount, but a portion of my paycheck, right, goes to the food stamp program. That goes to the person who buys the pop, who drinks it for 30 years, who ends up in the hospital, who can't afford their hospital bills, who is on Medicaid, who then uses my tax dollars to now pay for their medical care.
I do think that it's
There's a
really,
problem with that
I've
loop.
thought about, it relates to my industry too, and how employers are trying to reduce their healthcare costs, right? And they think by just trying to make people healthier, we're gonna somehow bring it down. People are inherently going to be unhealthy. Like, I just think that's like a falsehood that we can just like, we get to this perfect society where everybody's just making the correct healthcare decisions, so they're going to the doctor less. Like, I just don't see that happening. People are, I don't think we're giving people too much credit. Oh, if everybody could just afford really healthy food, they would just eat all healthy food and they would never have to go to the doctor. I'm like, I don't know. I think we're human beings. We're fallible, and we also, not even just our own decisions, but people get sick for so many different reasons, and it's not even all related to them being fat, you know? I don't know if there really is a way to make people that much healthier, even if there was, even if we started giving away free healthy food. Just be like, it's
just in our nature, this like addictive like thing. Like, why is there restrictions on gambling? Or like, why
there
can't
I was reading or listening to, as I mow my lawn, my audiobooks, and before the chip war one I suggested to you guys, I was listening to one on the history of the human race, and my name went back to early anthropology, and they said it was really cool. So they went into the addiction. So why are humans so easily addicted to things? And it was because in early days, food was scarce. So he was talking about food addiction in particular. Like, the human body is evolutionarily designed to consume food when it is available. And that was a really good thing back, when we were just not Neanderthals, but like early in human race.
Hunter-gatherers.
Yeah, early hunter-gatherers, you ate till you were content. And normally that's because when the food supply kind of stopped, you're like, all right, I got to go out tomorrow, walk 15 miles, and I can go stuff myself again. And that never left the human body. Like, there was no reason for that to ever evolutionarily leave until relatively recently. But Roman times, famine was very common. You needed to eat, and you needed to eat a lot. It wasn't until, agricultural revolution in, maybe it was, I don't know the date right off the top of my head, but that's the only time when food became plentiful, right? That's when you start seeing societies being built up, and now you have these stores of food, and humans can't help themselves. You now have food at your fingertips, and your body's literally made to eat. When there's food available, it has to go, and it has to satisfy that craving. It's not judging either way, but I thought that, you guys brought up food addiction, and that's immediately where my mind went, was like, the body's hardwired to do that.
And
now,
on top of that, to get the high calorie, like the really densely,
the high calorie, you got sodas, you got your junk food, super high calorie.
So
it's
like, dang, that's really good stuff.
Combination coming in.
And the cost per calorie, has gone down so much, and it's because of things like government subsidies that enabled us to now create this thing of high fructose corn syrup, where it used to be more expensive to create those calories, but now that we subsidize corn and we made this thing called high fructose corn syrup, now the cost to produce that sugar like sugary thing, that high caloric thing went way down, and so people's consumption just continues to go up.
It's kind of an interesting thing because what makes humans so different, and I'm going to tie it into, so our brains, obviously, that's the biggest thing with other animals, and our ability to create and, creativity. But what's the biggest downside of humans? You now have these weird things with our bodies, like we're addicted to high calorie foods. And while AI, I'm talking now back to AI is good for the creative side, and you can see it going steps up and beyond. You now have another side that's attacking humans in even the worst way. Now you got high calorie foods. You got it's this weird thing that's just like two giant waves coming at us, good and bad, and it's just like, dang, dude, we're right in the middle.
Are you saying AI is sort of like a high calorie like knowledge, like something that we'll be addicted to?
But
it's an addiction.
I mean, screens are an addiction, and you can think of screens as it's someone else's creativity when you're watching a TV show, but that did come from an individual, like another human making that for humans. So yeah, I mean, you could also say that, I mean, that's probably negative. You could also say that's a negative because you see iPad kids around these days, but when that's channeled correctly, you have extremely creative kids still, right? There's screens can be, I'm not going to say they're only a detriment, right? I think they're positive, honestly, if used correctly. So yeah, that's where I kind of stand on that.
I think I was just thinking as you were talking about the foods and addictions. I mean, the best way we've learned as for human nature to get people to do things is through different incentives, right? And so, there are employers that tell employees that if they go get a wellness check every year, they get, I don't know, $100 off of their premiums for the year. But in reality, they're still paying for it.
If you don't smoke,
so
same thing.
The company is still paying for it. They just basically are paying their employee an extra $100 a year, basically. I think that'd be interesting if insurance companies did that because they don't want to pay claims and pay for all this healthcare costs, right? They do everything so that they don't have to pay on a lot of things. It'd be interesting to see them try and incentivize employees for their insurance. If you're an employee of a company, be like, we'll cut your insurance premiums monthly by X amount if you go to the doctor or if you drop this many pounds. That one's probably slippery slope because not everybody's fat and everybody doesn't need to lose weight. But there are different benchmarks.
NAACP
yeah, that
class action lawsuit being
filed.
Maybe
just like the
right
now.
That example.
Make it a group effort.
One that came to my head.
Vacation.
There's other things I'm sure that you can do to incentivize a healthier population. For let's be honest, the insurance companies could care less if you're actually healthy. They just don't want to pay. But if your health outcomes are better because they incentivize you to, I don't know how you'd get people not to eat junk food. That would be a tough one. But if you could figure out a way of doing that, I think that'd be incredibly beneficial for those companies because then they're just paying less.
You just don't make it. Get it off the shelves. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to do it.
It's a systemic change, really.
You'd have to outlaw. It'd have to be. I mean, you'd have to have much higher regulation like they do in the EU, and basically don't you. Yeah,
EU's doing it right in my opinion.
Well, you look at those things of the ingredients in our bag of Doritos versus their bag. Their Doritos have 5 ingredients. Ours have 35 ingredients.
So this video of RFK talking about, I think it was tryptophan, which is used to make yellow dye number 4, but it's a product from oil, from tar. It's like a byproduct of asphalt or something. And it's in so many American products, and it's known to cause cancer and all these issues, but EU has totally outlawed it, and that's why their Fanta looks different than ours, and their Fruit Loops are different colors than our Fruit Loops, and all those. I think the food dyes is a pretty easy one to tackle, unnecessary chemicals to just make things.
Why are sodas yellow, or why are they who get it? It was marketing. They want it to look good,
and I think that plays a deeper we talked about when you consume a food, the food calorie and the richness to you. I think having bright, vibrant colors also does something to us psychologically. It's important to have those. It makes it more appetizing. I think there's studies about if you give somebody a Skittle that's colored purple, but it's actually flavored like a cherry, the way things look impacts how you taste them beyond, like, tasting is not exclusive. So if something is like a really nice cheesy color, it's going to taste cheesier than if it isn't. So then you can put a bunch of sawdust in there instead of
So
actual
do you think
cheese.
it's kind of this? I'm just thought of this right out here. Do you think it's like a laziness thing? Like, let's pretend you had a bag of Skittles, and every Skittle you had to put in your mouth, there was that second where you had to determine, is this a grape Skittle? Versus a regular bag of Skittles, where you pop it in your mouth, a yellow one, you know what the flavor is in your mind already.
Before you even put it in your mouth. Yeah.
Even less work to enjoy that food. Again, could totally not be a thing, but I just thought, are you inherently more likely to eat something if you don't have to worry about the flavor of what you're about to? Because imagine that in a Skittle, like random Skittle every single time.
Confusing.
It would be confusing.
Yeah.
And I guess
I would probably have a hard time even telling what a flavor is, just like from memory.
I mean, that's a whole other thing.
They all taste the same.
Strawberry.
Yeah, could they all taste the same, and we're really just the coloring is determining.
M&Ms taste different? I don't think so.
Okay, well, that's a little different.
Funny fact is, you mentioned Fanta.
This was a good
I
one.
remember watching this. I watched like a Pepsi versus Coke. They did like a Soda Wars like documentary, and Fanta is a Nazi product. Coca-Cola was producing.
Didn't know that.
They used to send like the syrup and stuff to Germany, and then Germany would like bottle it and sell it there. But when World War II broke out, the Coca-Cola brand like put an embargo on it. They're like, we're not going to sell to Nazi Germany anymore. And so like one of the arms of Coca-Cola that was still in Germany, they're like, well, we'll just like make our own product that's not technically Coca-Cola. And they're like, well, we'll call it Fanta. And they made Fanta for the Nazis.
I can almost hear the Nazis like fun.
And so Fanta came out of Nazi Germany. And then after the war and everything, Coca-Cola still owned it because it was like an arm of Coca-Cola. But Fanta's a drink of
They took it back.
You
part
enjoy
of
Fanta,
the reparations, the war reparations.
We need the Fanta.
Yeah.
Just your fun fact for the day.
All right. That was a good topic. I think that there's a lot of potential there to make progress. I hope.
Yeah.
I don't know. We should keep visiting on it. All right, Justin. I didn't know what you were going to want to talk about, but then once you posted the link, I remembered your disdain for YouTube TV's price hike. So let's hear it.
Yeah, Austin, let's not focus entirely on YouTube TV. I'm not going
to
say that the only ones to blame. It's pretty much all the streaming services. But this article was kind of interesting because I think it's something that's going on in everybody's back of their minds, like how we see the environment of streaming, where it's going, what's currently happening. And he just kind of dove into, he had a couple points that I thought maybe people didn't think of, because I think everybody's kind of seeing the circle that's happening, right? Like, we're decoupling, everybody's getting rid of cable, these streaming services are popping up. Oh, now instead of one streaming service, I have 3 or 4. It's kind of hard to keep track of all of them, what I'm paying for. It'd be kind of nice if they were all in one location and I could just, go to one app and see everything. Well, oh God, why don't we just bundle those together and, I'll just pay for that package. Well, we're right back to cable. It seems like the prettiest obvious circle that we got going on with streaming service. But, this guy, he brought up some interesting, things that are going to happen for the individuals like myself who are on the verge of I still want to game the system. Like, I'm trying to, cancel subscriptions when necessary and resubscribe when the shows I want to watch come on with a new season. And he brought up this idea, this is only going to get worse before things change. At least that was one of his paragraphs of discussion. He brought up things like resubscribe fees. Right, we don't see them right now. Like, you can cancel your Disney Plus, your Netflix, and a month later you can turn back on. But there is nothing stopping these companies from then saying, what, $2 fee. It's nothing. Just you've only subscribed for a week, or you only subscribe for a day. We hate to see you go, but I'm just letting you know when you come back, it's gonna be a $2 fee. So easy, logical, another reason for me to have a disdain for these streaming companies. And I thought that was interesting. He was just talking about, he shifted from a little more scummy things that are going to happen I ended up going on a little rabbit hole of what streaming services are actually profitable. And the two ones that are actually making a profit are the Warner Bros., which, if you guys know, that's HBO Max. So, and oddly enough, that's one of my favorite streaming services because they just have a good selection. And Netflix. And obviously, Netflix, really, the reason they're profitable is because they were the first move, right? They were the first ones to do this. So they had a huge jump on everybody else. But Disney, Paramount, NBC, like, these companies are not profitable. They're just pumping out content. They're hoping, because they're looking at Netflix, they're looking at Warner Bros. Like, oh, look at this source of revenue these guys are getting, and look at the demand there is. But they're not making money. They're just putting out content, and even Warner Bros., like the article I dove into off of this one, they just became profitable this year, and was largely due to price hike. So, when I was talking to you guys originally and why I hated these things, I was like, really? Another dollar every year? Like, they're not putting out good content. They're raising their prices just a little bit to try to reach
Disney
that
shut them
profitability.
down.
But yeah, I mean, that's honestly what it was. He ended on a lighter note, which was kind of fun, where basically you say some of these companies are not going to survive. It's just straight up, like, you guys watch Fubo TV, Sling TV, like, you guys, no one knows these things, but they have so much content, they're spending so much money, and they're not even remotely profitable. So eventually, what could happen, and this might, I think this is actually the way things should be, is less content being produced because of costs.
I was just gonna say they pump out content and they lose money, but then you sell the whole package for a massive profit to one of the bigger companies.
You have Netflix has 282 million subscribers, so if they can raise the price by $1 or $2, they can get to profitability very quickly. And so that's the game. That was the game.
Honestly,
with Uber,
I think more
too.
valuable than the profit is the data of what these people are watching and what they're interested in. Because then you take that information, and then you go and sell them products, or you show them them videos that have cool products in them.
The custom ad that they can give me versus you now demands a premium versus just a standard.
Yeah, at some
commercial.
point, they're gonna raise the price enough that people are like, I don't really want Netflix anymore. That's when it's gonna become all ads. Like at some point.
Which they did.
As an option, but I think at some point they are not even going to allow us to have the non. I'm shocked there's still even a non-ad option because like Amazon did away with it. Like Amazon,
where it's going to become really expensive.
So like at some point there will not be an option to not have ads. It just won't. It's not like we never had that option with cable, and they're not going to do it.
Yeah, like is this really that much?
That's how they can make more money every year because they're public companies. They need to make more money. At some point, you're going to hit that inflection point where you're like, oh, people, it's so expensive that I can't afford this anymore. People are going to stop doing it. And they're going to be like, it doesn't even make sense for us not to have an ad-free option. That's my personal opinion.
I don't want to derail back to AI, but it's going to be the same thing with ChatGPT, with any AI service. It's, everything's free right now. It's amazing. And there's this great equalizer of capabilities, but the price hikes are coming. OpenAI is going public and turning into a profitable company, and then you're going to have the ad-supported model and the freemium version, and then you're just going to have like the shitty AI that can't actually handle anything, and everybody else is pay to win, pay to play.
Well, why couldn't you do this? Why couldn't you just say
watch this video before I give you an answer?
Yeah, exactly. 10 years or less. Why do you need a streaming service? Why couldn't you just say, make me the show that is very similar to Seinfeld? And by the way,
watch that.
I would rather it be with characters who were from Italy. Go make it. Go make me Italian Seinfeld.
Make them all golden retrievers.
7 seasons.
There's a
all golden
aspect
and now
I think, to a lot of shows and like a lot of things we do. I think people like.
That's a good point.
Well, I'll share it with you, and then you'll share it, and then like it might catch on, it might not, but you can create your own content.
Copyrighted to like the AI company? Who gets the right? Like
that's like a whole.
So when I made our theme song for the show, I paid for the premium subscription for the song generator, because if you didn't, it belonged to the AI company. But if you had the pro version, it's like, no, this is yours. Like, you have all the
So
rights
maybe
to
that's
it. You
how
can
they'll do it. They'll, like,
commercialize it.
let you buy the rights to all the things that you make. It's like another revenue stream for them.
Yeah, probably.
want the
And then they'll
copyright.
hike the price up so that the only people who can actually make and create anything are
Oh, that was
the
another
are
interesting thing. Copyrights are usually like 100 years, and then after 100 years, it's like public domain, and that's why they've made like these horror films of like Winnie the Pooh recently and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Apparently in Britain, it's every 50 years, but there are two works that have no time limit on the copyright. Like, they're in copyright in perpetuity. One of them being Peter Pan. The second one, what do you think the second one is?
Harry Potter?
The Quran.
St. James Bible.
I don't know. The Bible? Oh, yeah, the Bible. There you go.
The only two
Why'd I go with
copyrights
Quran?
in all of the UK is Peter Pan and the St. James Bible.
Peter Pan.
That's how important
so
it was
funny.
to them. I just thought that was hilarious.
All right, we have to cut that out, though, because apparently Peter Pan is copyrighted,
sing
so
it.
we can't say the word.
Oh, we didn't sing the songs or anything.
That was a good topic. I think there's going to be just this explosion of like AI generated content that we won't even care to watch the stuff that we used to watch. We'll be able to make exactly what we want to see when we want to see it. And then that's it.
There's going to be so much, I think that's happening now, and actually leads into our conspiracy corner, but there's so much that's being generated that maybe you could make your own golden retriever Seinfeld and you would have a little community of people who would want to watch it, but there's going to be so much production that you couldn't possibly consume everything. It's just flooding. It's flooding everything. Any writing, any music, any video. It's all just like the amount of production is outpacing, I think, the amount of consumption that's possible.
And so the price of any piece of content goes to zero,
which
is what
for
you
me,
effectively
as
said.
an artist, it goes back to like the only reason you would produce art is because you want to produce it. Like, there's some like intrinsic human reason of producing art other than some commercial reason.
Maybe that was a better product.
The value of a single piece of,
But maybe not. I don't know.
Everything goes back to AI.
It's tough. It's tough to leave it out of the conversation today.
I know.
In 2025, it's pretty pervasive. I almost want to barf saying AI because it's such a buzzword, but I think it's a buzzword like with reason. It touches a lot of stuff.
All right, tell us about your conspiracy corner.
Have you guys heard of dead internet theory before?
Not really. Maybe you've texted about it, actually, but I couldn't describe it to you.
But it's a theory that and I don't know, I think there's like a really deep conspiratorial aspect to it. Like, there's like some governmental control and manipulation of the population. If you research dead internet theory, I think that's part of it. I'm not super interested in that. What's more interesting to me is there's a mark in time when there was more internet activity that was AI or bots or just computer generated rather than authentic human content. Like, that's a line that we crossed, and from that moment on, the internet is dead, quote unquote, because there's not as much life, like human life, on it. It's just you're chatting with a bunch of bots. You don't know it. A lot of the articles that you're reading are written by bots or reposted by bots. It's sort of it's been flooded. And so that was my comment earlier about with AI video generation making your golden retriever Seinfeld show and then posting it on the internet so that you guys watch it. Like, you guys, if I send that to you, you're not going to spend the time to watch my golden retriever Seinfeld show because you've already watched like all of the Jurassic Park Seinfeld shows that were like, there's just a million, there's too much out there to be able to possibly consume. A real world example of that was I'm in real estate and enrolled in a course on how to use ChatGPT in real estate. And I was in a Zoom call with like 90 other real estate professionals. And this woman was a AI expert. This was like early 2023. And she was like, what I do is I look up what today is the national holiday of. It's waffles. And then I go to ChatGPT and say, write me a 500-word essay on how waffles interact with real estate. And then it produces an article, and then she posts it on LinkedIn and all of her social medias. And she does that 4 times a day for like all of these different things. And she's teaching like 90 or 100 other like 60-year-old people how to just flood their social media feeds with AI generated content about basically garbage. And then I have to go through and sift through like what is the valuable information, what is just waffle real estate information that's written by AI that's sort of meaningless to me. And it becomes a question of like authenticity and value, and it's just really hard to sift through all of that. We come from the information age where you have access to all of the information in the world at your fingertips, to now being in a situation where you aren't sure what information is actually valuable anymore. And now it's buried underneath a bunch of waffle real estate articles. And so while all of that information is still there, it's becoming more and more difficult to actually access the authentic human generated valuable knowledge, because it's just like layered and layered with all of this garbage that's meant to get your eyeballs. And you've got advertisements on top of it that just, I don't know if you guys have felt that frustration. AI has been nice for like handling research and just like weeding through all the crap, because 2022 and prior, you Google anything and you gotta click through 5 different links and they all say the same thing, and you have to scroll to the bottom of the page through 100 different ads. Like, it was just really frustrating to find anything. And now AI has helped with some of that, but I suspect that's short-lived, primarily because of AI, like being able to produce even more and more junk that it's feeding off of anyways. So one other comment, I spoke earlier about the music producer who is concerned about losing his job. And he said something that really struck a chord with me, that 2020, I think the music gen software that we used for the intro music came out in 2023, early 2023. He said 2023, anything after that point or anything before that point, music was pure. And it was all just like from humans. And then everything after AI generated music started to become prevalent. It tainted the waters. It is in the water, and from that point on, any AI after that is going to be feeding off of AI generated music. And any music that you consume, any music that's in the algorithm that's like Spotify is feeding to you, like there's AI generated music in the water, and from this point forward, there is no longer pure human music. And I thought that was really interesting, and I think that's similar to the dead internet theory, that from this point onward it's not human activity, because like the bots are in the water, and it's really hard to, once it's intermingled and mixed in, to be able to separate it all back out. I think there's more like to the conspiratorial side of things, like who's controlling the bots that are manipulating sentiment, and Russia's swaying the 2016 election, that kind of stuff. I think there's probably some truth to the manipulation that happens, whether it's like large scale conspiracy and it's like our government that's doing it. I doubt it. I think it's just people with power, and who have access to powerful systems like AI that are going to be manipulating what information is shown to people. But it's interesting to me just that like the internet as it was conceived as just like this information source is now, it's a little bit more sinister, and I think it's a little bit harder to interact with.
This is why we need tagging on everything. Every piece of the internet has to be tagged as to what created it. This is where like maybe blockchain solves it. I don't know the technology behind it that well, but you need to know the link behind the inputs that created the thing. So if you're using the waffle example, you need to know that was generated by this ChatGPT LLM and plus this person's ID of like user ID. I don't know. Like those two things came together, created this thing, and now showed up on your, feed, and it's tagged as that, versus like something that. But I don't know how you're ever gonna do that. Like, because I could like, how do you tag that? If I go take it from somewhere and then just copy and paste it, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and even if you did solve that problem of how to do it, would you care? Because like if
Well,
to our
that's the
earlier
question.
argument about how important AI is, it's going to be everywhere that you just gloss right over the disclaimer that it used AI to be
So it doesn't really
generated.
matter at that point, and that's where that's where I guess I don't. As far as like all the junk out there, I don't know if it's just like the junk floats to the bottom and like the good stuff floats to the top somehow. Like, is that how everything has to be designed, basically? But like
per our diet conversation earlier, typically the junk floats to the top. Like that's the tastiest stuff.
yeah. But if it's content that you're talking about that like you're consuming on the internet, I guess you're saying that it's like the bad stuff is like what? Well, it's true. I mean, like, why does like I don't know. It seems like on X these days, like videos of people getting killed seem to do pretty well because everyone seems to be engaging with them, with like murder videos. And is that what you want everyone in society to be seeing 24/7 is murder videos? I don't know.
And AI knows how to make the perfect video that appeases all of your senses. That like that's exactly what you want to be watching.
So who,
even
right?
though
Who,
it
yeah,
may be
who,
total garbage. To the Instagram girls, like the most, it knows what your eyeballs are lingering on. Like you like brunettes, and so it's going to show you all of the most beautiful brunettes you've ever seen. It's going to be hard for you to look away.
And so that's where it goes to like.
You think?
Yeah. Do you care?
That
Like,
stuff has personally
I don't know.
turned me off of a lot of the social medias that like recommend stuff for me. Instagram, I kind
Yeah.
of stopped using completely because it's just like they think I'm gonna like these certain things that they recommend me, and I don't. And like, I think some of the streaming services were doing that for a while. It seems like they may have moved away from it, but I felt like when I was watching Netflix, they'd like I watched one show and they're like, "Oh, now you watch I don't know called Vikings." They're like, "Oh, now you want to watch everything all about Vikings." Like the algorithm's gotten better, but sometimes it overwhelms. I'm like, it turns me off. But I wonder if that'll do the same with AI when they're
Instagrams is the worst. Instagrams
yeah.
is the worst. Like you can manipulate their things so easy. Like I don't ever use it except to just screw with it. Like if it thinks that I want to look at like dogs, I'll look at golf, and then all of a sudden like everything is golf, and then like you go to the next thing and it's just everything is that, and like it's so stupid, honestly. Like it's not very intelligent.
There should be a transparency option to know how their algorithms are working, and an option to opt out of algorithmic feeds. I don't want to see anything that's algorithmically generated. I think
it's like
you should
on
have
X
both
they
of
have
those.
follow like the for you or the following tab. So like I only use the following tab now.
When I really started enjoying the internet was probably around, I don't know, like high school. And I would start to look at like Yahoo News feed and it would give me all random things about like things that are going on in the world. I'm like, wow, that's really fascinating. And over the last like 5-ish years, it's just like, oh, I looked at an article about Notre Dame football the other day. Now I'm getting constant articles about about like some player that's not going to play next game. Like, I don't care. I wanted to look at it one time. And now it thinks that's all I want to look at. And I'm not getting the news or the articles that I think I would find interesting because I just have a wide range of interests. Like the algorithms aren't very good at like they're good at giving you kind of subjects that are like that you're interested in, but if you have interests outside of like the couple things you look up on the internet, then you just get stuck with the same loop of all the same things all the time. It just like restricts curiosity.
All the sugary foods. I have that same gripe with Spotify and algorithmic music streaming services. I love music, but I almost never listen to music anymore. And that is, I think, primarily because of Spotify has ruined my enjoyment of music. And I think it did that a couple of different ways. One was through discovery. When I first started using Spotify, I liked their Discover Weekly. Like I would find random new music, and I have a wide range of interests. But over time, it felt like it was giving me the same song by 10 different artists. So like it just narrowed me into like, here's what you like, and this is the only thing that you listen to anymore. And then on top of that, when I listen to all of my liked music, when I use their shuffle feature or the radio feature, again, it's not like a true shuffle. I've lost, I feel like I've lost my own agency, and now I'm just like I have whatever the algorithm
Yeah,
feeds
like
me.
I feel like people think that these algorithms there's a science to them, but it's like they're basically trying to map the human brain, and no scientist has been able to do that yet. So them deciding, oh, because you like something, you're gonna like the things that are similar to that, and that's what you want out of life, is like very short-sighted in my opinion. And it's like ruining the interest on a lot of their sites. If they went back, like I'm fine with them doing it for targeted ads. Like that's how they make their money. So it's like cool. They saw me go on Amazon and I looked up a pair of Chuck Taylors, like, and they want to start putting ads for Chuck Taylors, fine. Albeit, like, I hate ads anyway. So it's like, at least show me, I guess, things that I'm interested in my ads. I'm fine with that. But for my content,
I always turn off
yeah,
all
like, there's always
targeted
going to be
ads.
target ads. I don't mind that stuff. But, like, for my content that I actually personally want to consume, I don't need them curating that for me. I don't personally want it.
I feel like
It's
we're in such
like
a tiniest majority or
You think?
minority of like people who would actually take the time to make an adjustment to an algorithm. I feel like it's like
You think most people
5% of
prefer
people will actually
having the
take that
curation?
option if given. They're just gonna just use it and like not have any clue what's going
glazed
on.
eyes. They just eat whatever's fed.
And maybe I'm not giving like people enough credit, but
But knowing my own struggle with it, it's easy to believe that a lot of people just like are in it.
It definitely turns me off of things. Like I don't like I used to use my news feed all the time when I go in Google Chrome, and now I like never look at it because it's the same stuff. I assume other people notice that stuff, and you're probably right. Some people probably just don't care enough, so they just continue to do it. I'm not saying these things are going to change because we bring them up. It's just I'm just pointing it out because it's something I noticed, and I mean, if you guys notice it too, really something.
good. We need to educate the world. This is our
feels like the
mission.
world is waking up a little bit to it.
Just how do you get
whether or not they care or whether or not they can do anything is another question, but it seems like people are generally becoming more aware of like the fact that these algorithms are like
hopefully products then, you know, like if we're noticing it, then someone else,
yeah,
I mean, who knows, it could be us. Someone else who's also could be very entrepreneurial is like, oh, I hate this. I hate how this algorithm is just like putting me in a box. So I'm going to make a different media source that doesn't do that.
But it's like in a capitalist world, it's hard. Like you make a YouTube or a Spotify that doesn't do that, and that appeals to all of us. But does that like still generate the kind of revenue that you can generate from feeding people garbage or junk foods that they will click on? And I'm going to scroll through like for 50 hours on Instagram because I can't look away. Like ours is probably not going to do that because we're going to show you a bunch of stuff that you don't like because it's not algorithmically generated. So we aren't going to be profitable. So we lose.
Yeah, that's tough. And that's what you're right. Like that's kind of what. That's why Instagram started giving you all these recommendations. Remember early Instagram where it was just like, I'm going to follow my friends. Once my friends have stopped posting things, it's just the end of the feed. Like, I'm done. Like, okay. I used to love that. I would like go through everything my friends posted, and then I'd be like, oh, good. I spent my 10 minutes on here, saw what they posted. Now I move on. But they don't want that, obviously, because they're a business. They want to keep you on there. So now it's just constant. It's all feed. Like, you could never there is no end. So you're right. I don't know.
I love that they call it feed too, like we're cattle.
That is a good point. I've never thought about it like that.
Maybe.
Like that's what we want to consume.
Your news feed, like they just put it in your mouth. Like here you go. This is what you get.
With useless carbs.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. We're addicted to it.
All right. That seems like a good place to wrap it up.
I agree.
So in conclusion,
on that
we're addicted to the junk algorithm. We're addicted to the junk food. We're addicted to our streaming services. And pretty soon the companies are going to be addicted to like robotic tokenization
Maybe
of the world.
Maybe change the name of the pod to Fed Up.
I'm fed up.
But then it'd have to be
because we've gone through all the feeds. We're fed up.
Then we have to come up with solutions for all these problems which we don't have. So that'd be a little bit harder.
No, that's our viewers. You, the viewer, like if you have any potential solutions to any of the problems that we've been talking about, we want to hear those. We'll put them in the comment section so that we can.
They were just the news.
I will say
That's the same thing
we
they
talked
say.
about
Like, oh, I'll give you all the information, but we're not going to do anything about it. It's your job to
yeah.
fix it.
We need a problem solve. We talked about almost an undigestible amount of very big topics over the last 2.5 hours. Like we covered all of it in tiny little pieces, and we probably didn't get to a lot of ideas. Like we scratched the surface on all of these things.
Even at scratching the surface, though, I feel like we're going deeper than the general public does. So, I mean, you said we only scratched the surface, but we also covered like a crazy amount of information. You know, I think we are starting a conversation, and we're having a conversation about things that are important and valuable. I think that's just that is enough to. I think that's valuable, even though if we don't have the solutions right now, like just having the conversation is part of the part.
I like to think they add some pretty valuable knowledge tidbits there. Like people are gonna listen to this and be like, Fanta was a Nazi drink? What? And they're gonna look it up. Or Peter Pan has a copyright in perpetuity? What?
That's the cold open right there. Just clip that part. It's just
what?
Fanta had Fanta was a
Nazi
drink.
Clicks.
What? And then it goes into the song. That's how the episode
we get
starts.
thousands of viewers.
See you on episode 2
tomorrow.
2025. It's a good start.
2025.
Everybody's going to be doing podcasts, but we've got the first mover advantage.
That's right.
Totally. We're way ahead of the podcast.
Nobody's thought of the podcast yet.
People have no idea.
Yeah.
This is the next big thing. You guys.
All right. See you guys.
See you, boys.
Symposium, no wrong or right. Just good conversation deep into the night. Yeah, we're still talking.